Warwickshire Local Council's charter, which is recently conducted. It's a charter relating to how we sort of deal with sort of parish councils, and it sets sort of minimum standards. Any of the authorities can go beyond those, but the idea is that we have a minimum standard that sort of applies throughout Warwickshire, with the exception of Nuneaton, because they don't have any parishes. And it sets out sort of it's been sort of produced in consultation with Walk to work out sort of minimum standards of consultation that parish councils can reasonably expect. It's an update of a previous charter, so it's been sort of updated to reflect sort of changes since it was last created. And as I say, it sort of applies across Warwickshire. We can go beyond the charter, but we shouldn't sort of go below it. I don't think, from having sort of read it, we've reviewed it as a management team, I don't think it presents any challenges to us, because I think we'll probably go beyond sort of a lot of the requirements in here anyway, but it does set a baseline that's useful. So in that context, feel free to debate.
Councillor Rolfe, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Principal Council's Parish Champions role profile. Now, I appreciate this is, more than one council that have come up with this, but it is the first time that some of us have seen this profile. And I just felt a little rewording, I would like to suggest a little rewording, if that's okay. And I appreciate that it would have to go to other councils for them to agree. But the third point down, the first, I'd like to change it to the first point of contact for local councils should be the local ward / division member, full stop. I would like to remove the word however, and I would like to put in the event of issues not being resolved, they should refer to the parish champion. I think it's simpler, it's more direct, and it's not as woolly, in my opinion. So can I just make that suggestion again? The first point of contact for local council should be the local ward / division member, full stop. In the event of issues not being resolved, they should refer to the parish champion.
Yeah, I've just taken some advice on Mr. Perks, and we can put that forward to Cabinet for Monday, and it will be up for them to take the view on it. Again,
thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Were you all happy with Councillor Rolfe's suggestion? We don't have to vote on this, do we?
No, if you can just give it as part of your feedback.
Yeah, thank you.
I just felt the important thing was to miss out the Principal Council. I don't think people really kind of get that. It's all a bit, ongoing concerns relating to dealings with. It just was a bit woolly. So you're happy with that wording? Yeah, you've got that? Thank you.
Yeah, we've written that down.
Thank you.
Got it, I'm sure. Yeah.
Right, I've got Councillor Johnson. Do you want to come in on that one, Councillor Wally Huggins?
I welcome that suggestion, Councillor Rolfe, actually, but I wonder if, I'm thinking of a case that some of us are aware of at the moment, where things happen, but things that happen immediately to resolve matters, that there has to be a sense of reasonableness about how long things take to go down the line. That might be something that Cabinet will think about on Monday. So you can't realistically expect something to be resolved within 6 weeks if there's a procedure or a complaint that's moving forward. I think, again, there has to be some reasonableness with regard to the time frame. Otherwise, whoever the parish champion is going to find themselves legged up in an awful lot of matters, potentially.
Yeah, and I think just add on to that as well, is sometimes resolution of the matter people might interpret in different ways. And when somebody might, sorry, my machine's just made a funny noise there. A reasonable person or somebody taking a pragmatic outside view of it would think it had been resolved, whereas somebody, maybe the complainant, maybe somebody else might think that resolution doesn't resolve it. And then I think again we could ask Cabinet to take a pragmatic view on this and obviously with some common sense and yeah. So again, we don't want to prejudge the situation and also to impinge on any potential complaint as well, do we, Mr. Perks?
No, my understanding is that the primary reason for that clause was to make it clear that people should still deal with the ward member in the first instance and not bypass the ward member by going to the parish champion, because, as you say, Councillor Rolfe, they'd be inundated with work. I think it was you said it, one of you said it anyway. It was you, sorry, Councillor Williams. So that was the primary purpose of it, and only use it for sort of escalated disputes. But your wording is perhaps a better version. We can put it to the Cabinet for their thoughts.
And I think, if I may just come back to that, I think that's why it's, in my opinion, important to leave out the word however. But because it's far too woolly. Yeah, thank you.
So I've got Councillor Johnston and Councillor Keithley, and Councillor Littlewood and Councillor Wally Hoggett.
I think the points I wanted to make was about the word however, and I think the points have already been made. I don't like to see these two sentences linked together.
However, I'll better move on now to Councillor Keithley.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. It's a point about the scope, I suppose. Deputy Chief Executive just mentioned that, you know, when people want to refer to this charter, I just think this charter is really aimed at the local councils, isn't it, and the working of local councils. One of the criticisms I receive quite regularly when I attend parish council meetings is that sometimes matters of importance to local residents that are raised through parish councils are raised with ward or division members. Issues are escalated to councils, and then there seems to be a delay or sometimes a total hiatus in response. And I suppose my question really is, how do we, within this charter, how do we ensure that responses, I'll give you an example in my ward, responses from, say, Warwickshire County Council highways are forthcoming in a reasonably timely manner, because in my experience I'm finding that often responses are not received, and local residents and parish councils get very frustrated with that. So I'm asking that question in support of parish councils and councillors that might be listening to this meeting, because I think it's a big issue.
Yeah, I think we're at those points. So do you want to come in on just that point?
I can say something a minute.
Yeah.
I think the sort of the purpose of the charter is to try and sort of improve dialogue between sort of the three levels of council. It's the charter sort of recognises some limitations that councils have to act under and try and sort of share those between the three levels. But I would hope by sort of improving communication between the three and committing to sort of look at local government at all three levels, we should be able to take that forward, Councillor Keithley. It's something that's certainly important to us. We need to be responsive to our residents because they put us here to provide services for them, and it's a vital part going forward.
Yeah.
If I could come back, could I come back on that?
Yep.
I mean, I think the charter's a good idea. I think that the parish councils need to be sort of in some way invested into this charter as well. I don't see that at the moment. And what worries me is that there are no consequences for the failure of the councils to respond in a reasonably timely manner. And that's my concern. And I think that if we were asking a lot of parish councillors how they felt about some of the responses they get from the senior tiers of councils, they would be disappointed with it.
Yeah, and so I suppose the whole point, I think Mr. Perks is right, the whole point of this is try and improve communication, avoid, remove the blockages, and not particularly around flooding blockages in that case, and any blockages in terms of getting responses. Sometimes, like we said earlier to Councillor Rolfe, the parish council might not like the response, whereas the response is probably fair and accurate, and they might not like it. So I think you're right, the parish councils and the town councils will have to invest into this themselves as well. I think it's a two-way process, particularly around usually some of the concerns around planning. And sometimes there are some concerns about lack of understanding it, and I think that's right. And I'm also mindful that we're potentially impinging as a district council on the county council. I'm sure there are different ways to go with response, but if we're going to be impinging on things that we have limited control over, limited ability to elicit a response, I don't want to raise people's expectations by doing so.
Thank you, Chair. But just in response to that, can I just say that I agree in some respects with what you said. You know, the parish councillors might not like the response that they receive from the other tiers of councils, but then professional officers might have considered what that response is, and that will be the position of those councils. What I'm concerned about is where there is no response.
I think, as I said in my introduction, this is a sort of Warwickshire-wide document that we sign up to that sets a minimum standard. Alongside this piece of work, we've got some other work going on with parishes. It was an issue that was picked up in our recent sort of peer challenge, and the action plan that we put out as a result of that involves establishing sort of parish forums, sort of working within the Stratford district, so as we will be improving relationships with parishes in other areas, and that might be an opportunity to pick some of these points up, Councillor Keithley. I'll make a note of that, and perhaps rather than do it through the sort of pan-Warwickshire document, we can do it within our own organisation.
That's good to hear. Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you for that. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. I think when the question comment came up into my mind, it was before the previous conversations, and a lot has been spoken to, my thoughts, in fact. But what we're looking at here, and as Mr. Perks has said, we're looking at a minimum standard here, and I would hope, if it's a minimum standard there, we're going to improve that standard on a continuous basis. Part of improvement is training, and going around my parish councils, and if they're listening, I hope they welcome my comment. There is a variability in the standard of understanding of what the rules, regulations, capabilities of the individual council levels are. What I would like to see is an increasing level of understanding and competence at parish council level, because they're in an extremely good place, especially in rural areas, but I think it applies to town councils just as equally, to increase the efficiency of the work that we're all doing. There is a lack of understanding of the detail, particularly with regards to planning with parish councils. And I think that training should be set as a minimum. And I know we're moving on with parish representatives, parish council representatives coming up, but I think we need to really consider a minimum level of training for parish councillors. They are, after all, in the majority of cases, elected members from their own communities. There are obviously people that are seconded, but that doesn't matter. They are in public office, and they need to be able to work to a minimum standard. We can only help them by training. Now, at the moment, there isn't a requirement for training on parish councillors at all. It's totally voluntary. Whether or not that's taken up is completely and entirely up to the individual parish councillor themselves. I don't think that's good enough, frankly. And I think that sometimes I think becoming a parish councillor is saying, well, you don't have any real responsibility because we don't have any real powers. But that's not true. They have a lot of effort. They can put a lot of effort into dealing with things that can clag up the system, because people get angry because they're not getting responses, but in actual fact, the approach that's being taken is incorrect or based on a fallacious understanding of what regulations are. So I would urge that some sort of additional amendment is made to this standard that will look to asking for or demanding that parish councillors get at least a minimum level of training that's required. Now, I understand the arguments have been put forward against this in the past are that these are volunteers and therefore it's hard enough to get them, so we might put people off. I don't think so. I think that one of the things that parish councillors find frustrating is they don't really understand or know what they can or cannot do. I think this will give people more confidence and give more professionalism and therefore more self-respect. And I think they can serve their communities better and the rest of us if this was done. So I do urge that this additional level of competency need is written into this standard. Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, I think there's number 3 on page 23 of the Cabinet report. It says about local councils will accept training opportunities offered by principal councils that are relevant to local councillors. And I think that whether we would like that strengthened, because it is, we're talking a fine line. We don't want to impose things. We're all about communication, backwards and forwards, two-way communication. Yeah, I think whether that could be potentially tweaked, because accept, it's a good word, and like I say, it's the only thing I can say it's perfectly acceptable. I can't think of a better phrase than that. Yeah, we'll accept, undertake. Yeah, I just don't know. I think that we do need to make sure that all parishes, all councils are working with the best information available, be in terms of communication, be in terms of training, being policies that have been put out, and access to those policies. So I think how we strengthen that paragraph, ask Cabinet to strengthen paragraph F on page 23 of the Cabinet report, I don't know, but Mr Perks might come in and rescue me now.
Well, I don't know if I'll rescue you, Chair, but I might be able to provide some useful input. I agree with you entirely, Councillor Little, that in a representative democracy, the parish councils have got the highest level of local knowledge, and they're a really key part of making sure that people involved in the process. The way things are set up, as a council, we can't sort of impose a requirement to train to a certain standard. They don't report into us. Whilst there are 3 tiers of local government, they are sort of independent. And the way that we've tried to address the concerns that you, I think, quite legitimately raise are through sort of NALC and the associations with the local councils. We've got a productive relationship with them, which I hope will be stronger following the peer review work I talked about. And we have, in recent times, quite proactively sort of tried to make things like planning training available so as parish and local councils can join with the district councillors, and you're all hearing the same training at the same time because you're all part of the same process. I think we need to go further with that, and I could definitely, and I think that's what the paragraph F is intended to sort of pursue. But we are slightly restricted that we can't make parish councils train to a certain standard because we don't have the power to do that. So I think the Charter was looking to push people in that direction, but we're certainly on the same agenda as you've raised.
I've got Councillor Wally Huggins, then Councillor Roth, please.
Thank you, Chair. It revolves around this interfacing between the parish councils and the district council, because I do think there is very much looking at some of this, and you've just said that the highest level of local knowledge is held by parish councils, and yet the frustration that parish councils have, particularly with planning matters, is that there may be no matters, there may be no letters of, or any, please don't build this here. There may just be letters of support, the parish council supports it, and yet all of that is disregarded for, and I can think of 3 examples in my ward alone where the local knowledge is completely disregarded, the local views are completely disregarded. There's been many at planning committee as well where these, the parishes are fully in support of something that needs to be done or built on or whatever, and yet these matters are disregarded, and that is not, I think, is not having enough weight as far as planning balance is concerned. So it's on that basis, should I wait? So it's on that basis that you end up with a parish council thinking, well, the district council don't listen to us, and it is the planning matters that are really at the fore of what they do, which has the greatest sort of impact. My question to you is, this is quite a document, and I welcome it. But what is the district council now going to do? And this is possibly a question for the cabinet. How is the district council then? What's their action plan going to be so that they welcome and interface far more with the parish councils, so it ceases to be an us and them scenario, which means that we are more inviting to those that need to come and do courses, and also how our officers, particularly those that do the direct interfacing with parish councils, what are their golden rules for that? What are their golden rules going to be for how do they communicate properly and adequately with parish councils, and how do they engage with them? Because I just think, and it's sort of a follow-on from Councillor Littlewood's question here, that it's just not good enough. Where practicable, give feedback on responses to consultations. No, it's not where practicable. There should be feedback on responses. This is too far, you know, where practicable, inform local councils about relevant consultations. What exactly does that mean? There should be. There must be, rather than where practicable. Oh, well, it wasn't practical because they'd booked 2 weeks annual leave and they weren't here to do it. That kind of thing. So it is really, if we're going to do this, then we have to take more regard of what our parish councils are saying to us and what they want from our planning team, because otherwise this document just ends up being yet another document for the sake of it, really. Oh yes, well, we do all of this, but there we go. Thank you.
I'll get Mr Perks to come back in a minute. I'll do the other questions, then come back in the summary, and then I'll summarise as well. Councillor Rolfe, please. I nearly called you Councillor Kate then. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. I sit on member development, and I've sat on member development for many, many years. And I have said for many, many years that parish councils should be invited to planning training. All training? Well, all training, but specifically planning training. And I have said it time and time again. And certain barriers have been put up, and I don't think those barriers should be there. It's about, you know, however many you can get in a room, blah, 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 blah. But actually, I think the relationship has to work two ways. And I think we should give all parish councils the ability to be able to come to any training session if they wish. Now, they're not all going to turn up in their hundreds and thousands. They're just not. But I do think we should allow them to come to certain training that will benefit them. And I think we all know that a lot of them would really have the advantage of some planning training. So I have mentioned this to the chair of member development, who's in the room at the moment, and I have mentioned this to Mesa Nash, and I do think that we should push for this more and more, because it is a two-way thing. Thank you.
Let's come back in, Councillor Keithley, and then I'll bring you in after Councillor Hench's over. I think that sounds a sensible idea. Perhaps we could tailor it to, they send a representative.
Well, that's what I mean. Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, or the clerk, yeah, representative, and they disseminate the information back, and they might be able to, because sometimes the clerks cover 2 or 3 parish councils, I know in my area, and they might be able to disseminate that information. Yeah, so yeah, no, just clarify. I've got Councillor Keithley. Can I bring Councillor Fradley in first, because he hasn't spoken yet, and then I'll bring in you, Peter. Sorry, and then Councillor Keithley and Councillor Littlewood. Could you bring the microphone a bit closer to you?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better?
That's much better, thank you.
And my only experience of parish councils is actually the town council in Stratford, so I've got a limited view of what happens outside Stratford. But I think we must remember that, as far as Stratford's concerned anyway, candidates to become councillors is a political route rather than any other route. You put your people ready. And I don't know whether political parties will acquaint their people in what will happen to them if they actually win. So there's that. It's goodness me, I've just won an election and now what have I got to do? And I don't know actually within Stratford Town Council what happens when somebody is newly elected as far as education is concerned.
I would hope that when people do stand for election, they've got some idea what they're letting themselves in for. Yeah, not 100%, but there are responsibilities that come with that role. And one of the responsibilities is to be informed as much as possible, to receive up-to-date training. And one, you're giving out better information to your residents, and secondly, you're not looking a fool when you're saying something that's totally wrong about planning or flooding or something like that. So, and that undermines your credibility. So I think that the training is intended to help both councillors and residents, because if a parish council or town council is responding, I'll stick to planning because it's easier, on a planning application, and they're making objections or making comments that are not anything to do with planning or not material planning reasons, it undermines their credibility, because you want the response to say, for example, we object to this because X, Y, and Z, and that's to do with the NDP or it's to do with NPPF. And that way, it's a really credible response. If they're coming back and responding, well, we don't like it because it's brown, that is not a good argument. It's a waste of their time, and it's also a waste of officers' time here having to deal with the proposals, put it on the website, put it on the planning portal. That was the word I was looking for. So I do think that, yeah, there's a bit of responsibility, and I think this training will help parish councils and make their life easier, but be able to do things more efficiently or effectively, and say, well, really, we can't deal with this. This isn't anything to do with either the town, district, county. That's a civil matter. We don't get involved in this, so we can't deal with it, because some of the things we deal with are civil matters that are outside our remit. And if councillors are aware of that, they can immediately deal with that problem and say, sorry, we can't help anymore. So, and again, it's all about priorities and workload management. So I think the better trained people are, and the better, more information, the more credible, more realistic they are, the more acceptable to members of the public, it will be better for everybody. But I do agree, the whole purpose of this is to try and improve communication, get people talking, get rid of misapprehensions, misunderstandings, and trying to get people to work together. And if we get the answer right first time in dealing with a resident's query, then they're not having to go to the parish champion as well. So again, you know, a stitch in time saves 9, or whatever the phrase is. And prevention is better than cure. Yeah, I'll come up with all these old phrases that my mum used to teach me, but they still hold water today, hold value today. So I think it is lots about getting things right. So, Councillor Seraphin, I do apologise, Peter. I'll let Ian go in front of you, and you'd had your hand up, so I do apologise.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, I totally agree that parish councillors should have training on planning. And I do attend my local parish meeting when they do have planning applications come in. And they were making really some not very good decisions. So I issued them all with this material consideration of planning decisions. And just a small thing, it has made them just look into that, and they've actually made better decisions, because virtually they were saying no representation all the time. But they've come to realise that they have to go by the rules that we have to go by. And as far as the other subject of connection between parish, ward member and county. I have a very good relation with the parish. They come to me with a county issue. I deal with the county issue. I get a response very quickly off the people I deal with. I always keep the parish informed of various things, whether it's district related or county. So I think that's going down the right route, that the more connection we have, the better. And as Councillor Wally Hoggins said, they are the people who know the areas and obviously restricted on, they have their views, but restricted to some of these planning considerations. But I think that's the way forward. More connection, the better.
Thank you, Chair. Look, when you go on Monday to Cabinet, you give feedback from this meeting. I think it'd be worthwhile just being really clear on where we are with the status of that current draft. Because in the document, in the Cabinet papers, it clearly says that there's attached a draft local charter, okay? And we've all been debating whether or not there should be some changes. I note that there's been a working group which involved members of town and parish councils as well as Walk. So this has already been through some process. The actual document says final draft, which suggests that this has already been signed off as acceptable with members of those working groups and Walk. So, you know, if you're going to go on Monday and you say, well, this particular committee has seen some stuff it doesn't like, yet the working group has signed this off as a final draft, you just need to be clear on whether or not you're suggesting it comes back out for a further iteration, or whether or not, in fact, this is the final draft that has been signed off by the members of this working group and they're all happy with it.
Yeah, I'll bring Mr Perks and I might have a little comment as well.
Thank you, Councillor Gidley. I think you're right. This is sort of David's paper rather than mine. Unfortunately, he can't be with us this morning because he's away. But my understanding is that, yes, it is the culmination of quite a lot of discussion and working group with NALC and sort of other councils, and it's been put out as a final draft for endorsement by all the councils unless they fundamentally can't sort of sign up to it. So I don't think it would be impossible for it to move. And we present it to the Cabinet sort of in good faith, and if people couldn't sign up to it, it'll have to go back to the working group. But yes, it is the culmination of quite a lot of discussion with other parish councils, and we would sort of, the Cabinet will have to decide whether they can sort of sign up to this or whether they need it amended before they can sign, and they'll have that debate on Monday, informed by the feedback that Over Scrutiny are giving today through the Chairman.
And so I think Mr Perks is true and fair. I do believe that our views should be heard, and we appreciate a lot of hard work has gone through with all the different partners involved. But I think as the Scrutiny Committee, we still got that right to say, to request, or for at least Cabinet to note our views on the situation. I'm certainly not advocating going out for consultation again because we could be coming back several times. I think some of the things we've suggested have been small tweaks or things that Councillor Rolfe have said that make things less ambiguous. And I think the bit around about training again, a bit about training is pertinent as well. So I think we can put our views forward. I think we've expressed them strongly. I've still got a couple of speakers to come in. I'll bring Councillor Passingham in next, then Councillor Littlewood, and then I think Councillor Wally Hoggins can have the last word.
Yeah, there's quite a lot in this charter, and I was wondering, like Councillor Wally Hoggins, how it will be implemented inside the council. Would there be extra resources needed, extra staff, or an allocation of some staff time, and I mean, to train to inform everybody of all the things in this would take a lot of time. Does it need to be disseminated across all departments, or the logistics of implementing this seem quite complicated, even though you know, there might be not much involved in the end. I just wondered if there's any thinking on that yet.
Yes, with things like this, we have mechanisms in place. We sort of have a managers forum, and it's really a sort of behaviours and values that we'd expect sort of the staff to sort of behave to. If and when it's endorsed by sort of cabinet, it would be a new policy that we would disseminate to the staff through sort of normal sort of training processes. I don't immediately see that we would need a lot more resource. It would just be the sort of the behaviours that the resource that we already have sort of demonstrating, sort of dealing with parish councils, raising awareness of it. And I think I've said more than sort of once and this morning that it's part of a bigger programme of improving relationships with sort of town and parish councils. So we would sort of disseminate the sort of the training and the values through sort of the managers forum and staff briefings. It would be an article for that. Was my initial thoughts on it, Councillor Massingham.
Right, I've got Councillor Littlewood then, please.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's really just a comment. I accept what's been said with regards to the ability to can't force parish councils to do anything, but we can set expectations, and this is what this charter is about. And just to endorse the fact that I think we need to be quite clear that parish councils will read this, and when they read it, they understand exactly what expectations are. So any clarification which may require slightly stronger language in certain areas, I think that should be encouraged, and urge the Cabinet to think about that.
Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yeah, thank you. Really, what we're asking for today is we're not asking for major amendments. We're asking for this document to be more personalised to us with just the odd tweak. But fundamentally, I think that what we're asking for now is, and there's been some lovely phrases used during the discussions today, is as a result of this, I see another document at no great shakes really, because it's what you're going to be, the behaviours and values document and expectations for officers, or expectations of what parish councils can expect from the district council and how that's going to work. And I think you could do it on this one side of A4 really, what you can legitimately, as a result of adoption of this is what you can expect. And that's really setting us, all of us, all elected members and all officers, quite a high bar for behaviour and interfacing, because really that, as we keep saying, that level of local government, parish councils are, that whether they like it or not, are really the first port of call for most of the residents in the district. So it's that we're personalising this document, and it's a now what are, you know, it's our own charter really as to the behaviours and values and expectations that our parish councils can have from us, and equally the behaviours, values and expectations that our residents can therefore expect from us. Thank you.
Okay. I'll just have one more thing, and then Mr. Perks might want to come in and summarise as well. I do think this has been a good debate, providing helpful comments to Cabinet. I think communication might be something we have on the work plan in the future. Want to review this and review communication in general. I think that's quite good. We'd have to give this some time to bed in. It wouldn't be fair to put it in and then look at it within 3 months. But I think a future work plan item for communication would be helpful, and encompass this as well, to see if there have been any changes, see if it's a material effect, and then just how we hear about how it's affecting staff as well, etc. So I think it could be a future work programme item, but I'll say not within the next 12 months at least. But I think it's something we do need to look at. Mr. Perks, do you want a quick summary, and then we'll move on to the next item, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for giving me notice that you wanted a summary, so at least I've got a couple of notes to work from. That was a really interesting debate, actually, and one that went sort of slightly beyond the paper, but I think was really useful, because, as I've said more than once, it's part of a bigger picture here. We've got a number of work streams going on around here addressing the peer review. We've got a work stream, speaking to Councillor Wally-Hoggins' point, coming out of the Planning Advisory Service report about more clarity about what sort of town and parish councils can expect. We've got a piece of work going on that, which I started with the team back end of last week. We did some workshops on that, so that there is work going on about that. one of the challenges we have is that town and parish councils aren't a single entity. They're a very broad church. We've got 113 of them. Some are very well organised. Some are much smaller organisations. So it's finding something that makes sure that we're picking up that sort of vital local voice from quite a different range of stakeholders. And they're sort of one of the stakeholders that will weigh into our decisions. There are always going to be other stakeholders, but I think what I'd like to see is, as a range of stakeholders, you can see how your voice has been heard, even if we don't end up agreeing with what you say in the first place, but you should see how your voice has been considered. So, yeah, and I'm picking up Councillor Littlewood's point. One of the things that's important to me is sort of with power comes responsibility, and if you sort of take a position of power and influence, then you have a duty to keep yourself informed and to train and to contribute positively to that process. And I'd certainly need to be looking to bring that out as part of a charter that we went to sort of with sort of town and parishes going forward. And I suppose my sort of final point was, going back to what I said at the very start of this is a baseline. It doesn't stop us going further, but I think it's a useful document to sort of set a floor rather than a ceiling, is the way I'm looking at it. So, yeah, I've certainly found the debate this morning very useful and given me some food for thought. Thank you.
And that's floor spelled F-L-O-O-R, not F-L-A-W, isn't it? Right, that was a really good debate. Our next item is the productivity plan we're going to be looking at, which is on page 47 of the Cabinet Papers. This comes under Councillor Curtis's portfolio, and Mr. Burrow was the lead officer on this.
We've got Councillor Johnston.
Councillor Johnston. Thank you.
I'm frankly surprised this has been brought forward for us to scrutinise today. How relevant this will be on the 19th of July remains to be seen. The officers in paragraph 4 on page 56 have described quite fully what the issues are, and I don't think we should spend any length of time on this. I don't think the Cabinet should either.
I'll let Mr. Perks is going to be introducing this, and I'll let him respond.
I'm, of course, politically neutral at this time, so I shall introduce it in good faith. The genesis of this was a requirement from the, I suppose, former government now. We were fortunate enough to receive some additional funding into local government as a supplementary budget settlement, and one of the conditions on receiving the additional funding was to produce a productivity plan. You're right, Councillor Johnson, the relevance of this going forward will only time will tell. You'll see from the Secretary of State's letter that it isn't expected to be a long document, and we were sort of guided into the areas that we should cover. We were asked to produce 4 pages covering sort of a range of topics. We've done that, and hopefully you'll find that it's to your liking.
Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
Yes, I'd like to go to the letter. I'm going to page 58 of the item 6. This is the letter from the Right Honourable Simon Hoare. And if we go to 4, your plans to reduce wasteful spend within your organisation and systems. Now, it doesn't matter what happens on next week, but what does matter is how we plan to reduce our wasteful spend within organisation and systems. That is what every massive organisation looks at all of the time. If I then go to the response that's been made with regard to that, which is on page 55, I suppose what I'm looking at and what I have in my mind is a more innovative ways of looking at things, because this is not a criticism, it's just an observation that this is just more of the same and as it always is. But what I would be looking at here is maybe we could just be a little bit more inventive and say, for example, have a portal for people to report perhaps when things are being wasted, or have you thought about it? Marks and Spencer's did a thing, didn't they, where they had the recycling of coat hangers once. We're going back many decades, I am that old, but it is that kind of thing where you can feed into a system anonymously if required. This is just a total waste of money, or this is a waste of time, we could do it better by doing X, Y and Z, because all I'm seeing on the document that's been done, and maybe it's because of the timing, is just a series of platitudes rather than innovation that is needed. And we do have some quite big budgets. I'm sorry, are you okay over there? Sorry. So that was my view, that we could perhaps open it up to both members and to officers as to any savings that they might come up with. I also have to say that, caveat this with the fact that myself and my deputy do have an open door to the chief exec's office if we do bring these sorts of things up. But again, it's anybody had any brilliant ideas, this should be, how do we do that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The chairman's asked me just to make a comment on that. It's a little bit like the report that we looked at earlier. This is a report back to government that sets out a position. It is fairly bland, but it's for a purpose. Certainly, I would encourage any members who've got ideas about sort of savings or innovative ideas. We certainly do it with staff sort of constantly, and sort of every budget cycle we go out to sort of both parties looking at sort of what's the most innovative way of using money. We go to each of the departments and each of the budget holders sort of asking for savings and growth proposals. So that is very much part of our culture. If you feel that should be stronger, then we can do more work on that and don't feel restricted by having to complete a government return. If that's something that the committee feels strongly about, I think it's part of what we do as meat and drink in any case. But if there are comments to be made, then I'd be very happy to hear them. But don't feel fettered by this report. Let's just do that anyway, because it's what we should be doing.
Yeah, I think I'll just add on to that. This is what we should be doing anyway. I know Councillor Keithy would, item number 3, your plans to reduce wasteful spend. Continue to monitor processes and carefully examine new ways of working to ensure the most efficient is employed in the first instance. And we've had discussions about this before. Get it right first time, and the stitching time saves 9, etc. So I think that's quite important. We should be doing these things anyway, but the only caveat I would like to put in is, like say, the 89% of purchase on the green waste bins done online, but we also need to remember there are people who still have difficulty accessing the internet, doing things automatically online. So obviously in the drive for efficiency and effectiveness, we also must make arrangements in certain aspects the people who have limited access to the internet, etc. So, but again, I think it does what it says on the tin. We should be doing these things anyway. And like you say, whatever name we call it, I'm sure whatever government comes in next, there will be some form of iteration of this in the future, probably with a different name. But I worked in local government 30 plus years, and these things do keep on coming around in a different guise. In the terms of innovation, and sometimes the innovation is repeating things that happened 25 years ago. And obviously, I just want to think, Councillor Wally Huggins, you said about Marks and Spencer's, and implying that you're old. Well, I'm far older than you, so that implies that I'm old too. So I remember the Marks and Spencer's hangers situation as well. So I think it's a good point that we just have to be mindful to constructive suggestions from members of the public, parish and councils and town councils as well, to make things, because we haven't got all the answers, and let's see how practical some suggestions are to improve things, because that's what we should be doing. Right, I've rambled on. Anybody else want to ramble on, or should we move on? Are we happy with that? We discussed this one. Got something we can come back to Cabinet that broadly we're happy, and we should be doing this anyway, and whatever shape or form that comes through in the future, we should be responding positively as well, but mindful of sometimes efficiencies could disadvantage certain members of our community. So we need to come with that. Councillor Curtis, do you want to come forward, please?
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I absolutely take the point that efficiencies and more use of digital procedures. The point has been well made, and I've discussed this with Mr. Burrell on a number of occasions. And basically, I think the feeling is that the more we can transform some of our services by increasing use of technology, it will actually free up officer time to be able to deal with those residents who are in need of additional support. So we're very mindful of the fact that not everyone necessarily has internet access, not everyone has a mobile smartphone or whatever, but the more we can streamline some areas of the organisation and the more we can encourage residents who are able to use the internet and access, the more it does free up valuable officer time to deal with those residents who are most in need. And obviously, we really want to look after those residents who do need that additional support. Just make that comment.
Councillor Curtis, have you been reading my notes, have you? I don't know how you read my writing, but I was coming with something very similar. So I'm glad we're singing from the same page on that, and it makes sense. But again, if we can note that and make that aware to our residents.
I think the only other comment I'd make, if I may, Chair, on that paper, I take Councillor Wally Hoggins' points on board. I think the government wanted a 4-page response. It's inevitably pretty high level. It hasn't gone into that sort of detail, and I'd agree that those sort of detailed ideas are something that we do want to look at going in the future. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Brilliant. And again, it might be something for the future work programme, how we're taking some of these items forward. We've got the overarching principles in the 4-page document. There might be things that we want to bring forward to look at as well. And again, emphasising the fact that the vulnerable members of society, we make sure they're not disadvantaged, and taking on Councillor Curtis's point when he read my notes as well, about freeing resources up by doing things as efficiently as possible for people who can access via the internet. It gives us resources to help the people who are in difficulty doing so. So, thank you. Is that a fair summary? Are we happy with that? Good. I can see everybody's tired at the moment. You okay? You were smiling? No, we were right. We were smiling. It was good. Too many pieces of paper. Anything else on the cabinet papers? We've got a burning issue to talk about. Councillor Rolfe?
I just will bring up the strategic partnership just to say that it's not a decision-making body. It's a conduit, if you like. It's there to kind of soak up ideas and to throw out ideas. And I think probably one of the best things that's coming out, the most important thing that's coming out of the strategic partnership at the moment is the transport study, which I think is really important. And we're on it. We are right behind it, and so is the transport group, the local transport group that the town council set up. So just to say, it is going well. It is a very, very important group, but it is not, I mean, obviously we're reliant on money, so we want people to kind of come and say, you're great, and we want to say how great we are. Seriously, we are working very hard to make it good for Stratford. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you for that. The only thing, if you'll indulge me, was something very briefly on the draft revenue outturn. Obviously, it's really looking positive. I think the only thing I would like to comment is that we have been fortunate with our investment interest. Obviously, that probably won't be sustained in the future, and I know Mr. Burrell has got a inflation reserve that we've not used or not touched. But obviously, the rates will start coming down. significantly, I believe. I could be an economist, I could be one of the pollsters, you know, is I could say something and just add I believe, or it is likely, or the whatever, because we all know. I mentioned the word pollsters and I shouldn't have said that, so I do apologise. Experts, but in terms of inflation rates, economists, etc., I think it is proposed that we might not be able to get the rates in the future that we are currently now. And hopefully that's a non-political statement. Is that right, Sue? That was, I'm trying to be as tactful as possible, which is difficult for me, as you know. Thank you, Dave, for laughing at that one. But certainly, again, we need to be mindful on that. And the only other thing, we've had to have agency staff in to help with workload, and two, there were some areas of quite significant staff vacancies. So therefore, what are we not doing? Are things being put back because of staff absences, vacancies or absences, etc.? I think there was one of them. There was a couple of. So again, it's you know, obviously the position is looking really positive, but there is also sometimes the high interest returns are sometimes masking other areas where we have got concerns, and that happens in all the counts. But so it's just making sure celebrate the positives, but also investigate where there are items that we could potentially be looking into, whether they're ongoing, whether they're one-off, whether there are reasons behind them, whether there's been like unprecedented demand in terms of council tax, etc., and revenues. So it's just something we could hopefully Cabinet would note, and obviously we've got the portfolio holder here, so they're noted for Cabinet on Monday, if that is reasonable. Is that reasonable? I do apologise. I tried not to touch on this certain thing that's happening next week, and if I inadvertently did, I do apologise for that, and hopefully Sue won't hit me too hard. Will you, Sue? Good. Thank you for that. Brilliant. Any other items members want to discuss about the Cabinet papers, or shall we move on? Right. Item 6 is the work plan. We've touched upon a couple of things to do with communications, then a bit further down the line, including looking at the charter. The ones that we've got are we'd like some questions for when county highways and the flooding teams come. We'd like to, you know, have as many questions as possible. I'm not precluding questions on the day that suddenly you get think about or are prompted by other members' questions. But I think we need to have some areas that the portfolio holder from the county council can bring relevant officers to support him at the meeting. So if we're talking about flooding, we're talking about highways, we're talking about the transport strategy, what questions or some questions for them in advance would be appreciated. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, before that, can we talk about the extraordinary meeting on the 19th of July? So that is a one item agenda, is that right? No, two items. Could you just briefly explain, because I can't be at that meeting.
Howard, do you want to?
Yeah, so there's the reason it was initially called this 19th of July meeting is because there's an additional cabinet meeting on the 22nd to look at the UBUS item. There was a slight delay on that. And now we've been informed that, well, there's also going to be a joint cabinet meeting to deal with, and there's going to be 2 reports on that joint cabinet meeting, both to do with the South Warwickshire local plan. Yeah, or the HELA, or the Hedner report, and another one as well.
So I'd like to send my apologies.
I've got the names of both reports.
Obviously, I don't encourage, or I wouldn't like extraordinary meetings, because we know that we try and plan them in advance and people have their commitments and work around them. Obviously, you're triple hat, aren't you, Councillor Rolfe?
But no, I'm actually on holiday. I'm going on holiday again. I'm actually on holiday.
And that,
This is something very important to me for you, Buzz.
yeah.
I'm sorry, but I will make my comments before I...
Yeah, and that's appreciated. And whatever we do, and that is the trouble of sometimes having extraordinary meetings in the middle of summer. Do you think people go on holiday in the middle of the summer? Yeah, I take your points on board, and if you can put your comments in on those, that would be helpful. Mr. Burks, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, I was just going to sort of apologise for bringing in the extraordinary meetings. As like you say, we do try and avoid those, particularly in the summer, but particularly on the U-Bus report, we're sort of slightly hidebound because the system has to be in time for the start of the new term in September, and we haven't had the county council's tender figures back, so we can't give you an accurate picture until we've got those numbers, and we can't push it back till after September, which we would like to have done because the system's got to be in place for the school's term, and we can't give you the bring it before because we haven't got the numbers to bring you. So we felt it was better to have an extraordinary meeting than nothing at all, but I do apologise that it's not an ideal timing for it. But we've done what we can.
Councillor Johnston, Dave, and did you want to go? And then Councillor Wally-Hoggins, please.
As these items were deferred from the work programme for today, are the reports written and can we see them sooner than we might have done in other circumstances?
The U-Bus report is partly written, but as I say, we're waiting for some data based on the County Council's procurement to sort of give you accurate figures and costs for that. We will share them as soon as we can, I think is probably my best answer to that, because I don't want to sort of share them and then change them, because that never lands well with people. But yeah, we will try and get them out early, Councillor Johnson, particularly with people away, because it at least gives you a chance to make comments to the committee.
Yeah, I think it's both Malcolm and I would quite like Severn Trent to come before us at some point. Has that been as part of that? And I note that they are due to come fairly, we're discussing flooding, but actually Severn Trent and all matters associated with water supply and sewage is another matter, I think, a separate matter. And I think for the length and breadth of the district, there's many people that would like them to be here. Has that been factored? I'm assuming that's...
Yeah, they are coming, I can't remember exactly, but they are coming pretty soon.
So, just to advise, so that flooding management meeting, flooding management from Warwickshire County Council will be there, Severn Trent will be there, and the Environment Agency as well. So 3 organisations.
Yeah, but that's what I'm worried about. It's to do with flooding, not to do with sewage and sewage management.
Yeah, I think we can link them in.
We let them know then.
Yeah, I think, and the problem is that the amount of disruption on the road network and the coordination, obviously, and sometimes obviously you can't help emergency bursts, etc. But sometimes the coordination, or the other thing that is, they do sometimes take a while to take their roadworks away after the works have been finished. So that's another thing.
Sorry, Andy, to just go back, it's not just about flooding and roadworks, is it? There's more stuff going on with Severn Trent that's not related to just road and flood management. And I understand that they're coming, but people that deal with floods and road management are entirely different to those that deal with the sewage network, etc.
Yeah, we could ask.
What's it called? Sorry, Dom.
Infrastructure.
Anyway, I've had exactly the same problem in Ilmington. It's surface water management that overflows the sewage system, which isn't fit for purpose. There's too much water, basically. So I suppose in some ways it is a flood management discussion, because it's surface water and how that's kept out of the kind of sewage system. So those are the questions I'll be bringing forward. Whether that's covered under that remit is a different matter, but that's my understanding anyway.
Well, I think because they're coming flooded, we'll need to make it clear that we need to bring that in. Councillor Rolfe, please.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need this to be brought forward as a discussion at ONS, but I think we would all benefit from just a one-page update on how we deal with traveller encampments. We've got one currently in Stratford, and I think councillors need to know the process. If we can just have that process told to us again, because I never know the kind of the how it works. So if we can just be told what happens and how it happens, I think I'd be grateful, and I think other councillors would be very grateful as well.
Would it be helpful if I circulated the Egyptian Traveller Protocol that we're signed up to, the county-wide sort of unauthorised encampment
That's
protocol?
exactly what I think we all need.
I'll ask Howard
because
and the
we're
committee
coming
to
up
send
to
that round.
this time of year when they are around, and I would quite like to know the process. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Passingham and Councillor Littlewood.
Sorry, getting back to the flooding and the county council and so on coming. I'm a member of Shipston Area Flood Action Group, as you know, and they've done some fantastic work, and it seems to be very effective. And I know they'd be, well, the committee would be very interested in coming on to this to hear what they're saying. But do you think it'd be useful for them to do a short presentation as well?
I think if I do know the flooding portfolio holder, and I think if they liaise with Mr. Mahal at the county to come forward with a joint one, that to see how it's worked, some indication of how it works, because SAFAG is probably an exemplar in terms of community working with the county and other agencies to protect their area, protect their communities and residents. So I think that might be I think that'll be enlightening for the members of the committee, and it would also sometimes be a bit of a positive, because sometimes some of these meetings can almost sound like an attack all the while, but there are positives as well with working together. So
you're saying
I'll speak to you after the meeting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Councillor Littlewood, please.
Do you know what? It's gone completely out of my head. It's back now. We'd moved on and in comment really to Mr. Perks's suggestion to circulate the protocol. Could I ask that includes parish council chairs, please?
Or we could send it to Oak. And they can disseminate that for us then, couldn't they?
Yeah, I've no strong feelings either way.
Yeah. And we'll be back to that Walk Charter that we were talking about earlier, weren't we? So we go round.
The only comment about, please do send it to Walk as well. That would be great, but you are delaying the promulgation process by a month if you do so.
So that could be another thing on the communication strategy, is speed up. Right, we are going. We do know what we're doing. It almost sounds like we're joined up. I've got nothing else for the work plan. I have got something else on the work plan from Councillor Keithley, who's just sneaked in.
Thank you, Chair. Well, this morning we spent quite a bit of time talking about this charter and how it applies to the different tiers of councils, and particularly the parish councils, how they would buy into that. We've got a parish council champion. We've talked about, engaging with WALC. Do you think that we ought to have in our programme of invitations, we should have an update from the parish champion, the steering group that's working that you described, Tony, and perhaps WALC on the way in which we're progressing with the improvements in communications with the parish councils? Parish councils, you said there were over 100 of them, not all active as that, but there are a lot. If each one's got 5 or 6 councillors, we're talking about a lot of local councillors. Maybe that's an opportunity for this group to engage with them and see what progress we're making, because at the moment it feels a little bit, I'm not sure where we're at with it. It's a little bit like some transparency for me.
I apologise, Councillor Keith. Probably my communication wasn't clear. What I was suggesting that we have an item on the work plan in the future regarding communication, not general communication with residents, but to bring this charter as part of that item on our work plan to discuss how any improvements have materialised after this charter's come in. Give it some time to bed in for 12 months and then bring it forward as part of our general communication item on OSC. So not only communicating via our parish and town councils, but also how we still communicate directly with residents as well, because I think the two are interlinked. But if we give some time for this new charter to bed in and see if it has made a material difference, I think then we could then potentially say, well, it's had these positive effects, but there are still things that we need to cover, and does the charter, or do we need to use different strategies to meet the needs or the things that are missing as well?
So you're agreeing with me then?
You were agreeing with me what I'd said earlier, but you'd missed it. So it's like the Chuckle Brothers, isn't it? To me, to you. Councillor Roth, I'm not saying you're one of the Chuckle Brothers, by the way.
I don't see on the work programme the follow-up to the Task and Finish group on social housing complaints. And we did say, did we not, that we'd have every 6 months? And I don't see it on the list. I think, yes, Councillor Wally-Hoggins.
Sarah, do you want to come in, please, and then we'll bring her.
Yeah, we have to, doesn't Cabinet have to, full council have to agree that that's what's going to happen before we can put it onto our work programme, unfortunately. So it will, unless Howard wants to add anything to that, but it's not yet established in stone. So we're nearly there, but not quite. So,
assuming it gets ratified, can we actually put it on the list
it will
so
be.
that we
I'm
don't
quite sure
forget?
it'll be on the list once that, but we can't jump the gun. Did you have anything else to add to that, Howard? But that's my understanding of it. It's all right, thank you.
It's on everybody's radar. Whilst it's fresh, we'll keep on going. And whilst talking about fresh, here's Councillor Johnston, please. Do you want to come in?
Two things. Have we had a response from the County Council about incorporating the Stratford-on-Avon transport strategy into the meeting on the 4th of October?
Yeah, that's what I said about the transport strategy and asking for questions.
So that's agreed then. It just doesn't say that here. The other thing is the Task and Finish group on ASB. Are we any further forward on that?
We're looking at this. We'll bring something forward. There's one or two things we've just... there's a new strategy that's come out, new framework, is not Howard, to do with ASB, that we've got responsibilities for. So there's just some things we want to clarify. It is on the radar, it is on the, but we just want to make sure we're doing the right things, we've got the right objectives, we know what we're going to be doing. And I didn't want to bring it forward prematurely. It is on the radar, it's not going to be swept under the carpet. And Mr. Slemensek, I'll pronounce his name properly there, am I? Is coming, is it August, I blink, to do with community safety. And then I think if we tease something out of that, we can then have a full item to do with ASB. So I'm just making sure, I just don't want to do it prematurely. I just want to make sure we've got all the information and officers are prepared for what we want. I know that can be a difficult task for officers trying to understand or decipher what councillors want, but it's not going to be swept on the cart. It's an important item, but we're not quite there, David, I'm afraid. So,
may I very quickly follow up? We did go out to everyone, not just this. We did go out to everyone that wanted to be on that group, didn't we? We didn't just stay with ONS committee. Because I think there are other councillors that would be quite interested in being part of that Task and Finish group. I thought we did, I can't remember.
About the ASB Task and Finish group. Yeah. Yeah, we haven't established the membership yet.
In which case, can I propose that we do go out to everyone? I think there are councillors that would like to be on it. I know it can't be too big, but I think we ought to give other councillors the opportunity to sit on it if they wish to.
Councillor Wally
We
Huggins,
had this, Kate. We had this issue, didn't we, with the housing association, and what we did was that other councillors could either could feed into it, and also I think that one of the learning points from the housing association one is that perhaps we have one meeting, or where we invite other members to come in and you know just speak to us with their encounters, rather than, because otherwise it does get quite. But
you're assuming it's the same group as the social housing.
No,
and it won't necessarily
definitely
be
not.
that.
It's from this. It's because, don't forget, there's been a change of faces sitting in this room today, so that's not necessarily the case.
yeah, I'm more erring on the side that the membership would be made up of members of the OSC. We've had the OSC training, but I'm like with the Task and Finish group on social housing, members who are not on OSC were allowed to participate and contribute. I know Councillor Junior contributed, and others have as well. So I'm happy to accept their advice and opinions and knowledge, etc. But I am slightly reluctant to make them full members of the Task and Finish group, because sometimes what's the point of having a scrutiny committee of OSC if you're not going to stand on the Task and Finish group that you're responsible for, and it comes out in OSC's name. So I don't want to preclude people from contributing, but I think the membership should be made up from this scrutiny committee.
I'd like to disagree with that. Thank you. That is my opinion.
Yeah,
Thank
when we come to the item, when we discuss it at the next future meeting of OSC, we can then determine the makeup of that Task and Finish group. Right. I'm worried, it's only 20 past 11. And
Don't worry, that's fine.
right, no urgent business. I close this meeting at 11:21. Thank you.